Why is my launch angle with my wedges so inconsistent? Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. Why is my contact so inconsistent? In today's video, we're gonna go from level 2 in Op 36, which is 50 yards away, and start to understand how to use our tool better to create the ideal launch angle to hit the best shots for you. Today, we're gonna talk about a few things that we can do pre-swing before we hit our wedges. And then also we'll talk about one thing in swing. We're going to be using the foresight today to measure the launch angle. If you think about if you were shooting water out of a garden hose, there's a point where maybe it's too high, and then there's a point where maybe it's too low. There's an ideal launch angle for driver. Many of you have been fit before. Maybe you learned that your launch angle was too low and it didn't carry far enough, and you needed to launch it higher. There's also an ideal launch angle for these 40, 45-yard wedge shots. Our intention here is to try to hit this ball somewhere between 40 and 45 yards. The pin is 50 yards away. If I hit this one here, that one carried 49 yards. It launched just a little bit high at 36.9. I'm going to try to show you how we can launch this right around 30 degrees. As we start to look at some pieces today for your wedge game, the first thing I want to talk about is your stance width. When we were from 25 yards away, if you'll remember, the width of our stance was about a fist width distance. That's how wide our stance needed to be, or we preferred for about a 25-yard pitch shot. As we go to hit the ball a little bit further, we're going to widen our stance slightly, which will allow us to start to turn and tilt our body a little bit better, which will give us a little bit more power and precision. How wide? We certainly don't want to go too wide. A great rule of thumb on this is we're going to use the length of our grip for our heels. If we put two balls down, and you can do this at home, on one end of your grip and on the other, that's where you're going to put your heels. And you can see that's wider than a fist. It's approximately 12 inches, which is a great width to have to hit this shot. Let me step into this shot where my width is approximately 12 inches. And that one went 49 yards, a little bit higher launch. I got to get my launch down just a little bit. Could also be because I'm hitting these range balls that tend to launch a little bit higher. What would happen if I went too wide with my stance? If I was hitting a wedge, and we see this from time to time in Op 36, somebody sets up just as they would for their driver. If somebody set up to hit a wedge shot, their stance was wide. It's very hard for me to generate the right angle of attack with a wedge to create the shot that I want to hit off the fifth groove of the wedge. Conversely, if we were too narrow with our stance, I can already feel like this is going to be hard to generate enough power to get it there. And I had to generate some power with my wrists, a little bit more speed of my turn than I wanted to. I would highly recommend that you get your stance width correct. Again, that will allow you to turn, tilt your body, to generate the correct amount of power and precision, but also more specifically, get the angle of attack correct as the club descends into the ball to hit the shot that you want. That's stance width. That's the first piece we're going to talk about. The second piece I want to talk about is where you place the ball in your stance. Some of you may know that with driver, you place the ball towards the front of your stance. If the left shoulder is the center of your swing, with a driver, you might put the ball directly off of that. With a wedge, we're going to put the ball inside of our left shoulder to help us hit down a little bit, and also for us to hit it high enough on the club face to get the shot that we want. A simple thing that you could do is you could put a stick on the ground Then take your grip, put it equidistant on each side of the stick, put your 2 golf balls down for your stance width, and now you have a neat practice station to work on this. You put your heels in, and my golf ball is somewhat near the middle of my stance, ideally 3 or 4 balls inside of my left shoulder. This puts me in a really good spot to hit a shot from 50 yards. Woo! We're launching it high today, 38 degrees. I think that is directly related to hitting these range balls. Let me switch to a little bit better golf ball and see if that'll help me get my launch down. I'm going with a little bit nicer golf ball here. Stance width. Gosh, amazing how much the golf ball matters. That one launched at 31 degrees. The other ones were launching at 38, 39. Be very careful with the ball that you practice with as you get to a higher level in golf. Hitting range balls is fine for those of you that are just starting out, but if you get pretty precise, you really want to get to a high level, you've got to start practicing with your golf ball that you normally use, which is a higher end ball than a range ball. What would happen if you had the ball too far forward in your stance? What if this white stick was more towards my left foot and I was hitting a wedge? What do you think would happen? Well, let's see. Let's make sure we got it in the zone for the foresight. Woo! That thing launched at 48 degrees. This club is a 54-degree wedge. I almost launched it at the angle of the wedge. That is incredibly high, 48 degrees. Again, we're going for around 30 degrees. What would happen if I had the ball way back in my stance? If I hit this one with the ball way back in my stance, comes out a little lower. That one was around 25 degrees of launch. And there are some times that you do want to launch the ball really low. Maybe you're in the trees or you want to launch it high. Today, we're really talking about a stock shot that I encourage everybody to have in their game from around 50 yards away. To recap, the first thing we talked about was the width of your stance. We talked about being a grip's length width in your stance is a pretty good rule of thumb. If we get too wide, if we get too narrow, it makes this shot more difficult. We also talked about the ball position. Let's keep it simple. It's in the middle of your stance. We don't want the ball too far forward for a basic 45-yard shot. We don't want the ball too far back, although there is times we want to have that to hit those different shots. The final piece I wanted to talk about is at setup, the handle location, and how that plays into what I want you to work on in your wedges to help you get the launch angle correct. As we set up, we want to make sure that the handle is far enough forward that it's pointing at our first belt loop on our pants. But you don't want to set up with the butt of the club pointed right at your zipper, and you don't want it pointed at your belt loop on your right side. You want it slightly forward. Why is that? Well, that would help you as you come into the ball to have the handle slightly forward, which will keep the face more stable, which will also help you with your contact because it's a lot more consistent to come into the ball like this than if you're exploding your wrists at impact into the back of the ball or into the ground. It's a lot easier to keep your wrists a little bit more stable. Let me show you a shot where I have the handle forward slightly. Didn't catch that one great. Launch was better because the ball was a little bit better. Let me try that one more time. Handle forward slightly. That was a little better. And now my final thought that I'll leave with you today is that once you get the handle forward at setup, the goal is to transport this club to your finish without changing your wrists in your swing. I want you to get really good at setting up with the handle forward, transporting it to your finish, and then trying to figure out, well, how do I make a backswing and arrive to that finish position? You'll start to self-organize on what you need to do that. We don't want the wrists as I call it, exploding at impact this way or this way. We want them to stay very stable through the shot. Let me see if I can do a decent job of this one. That was not. And again, my intention when I'm hitting this shot is I'm trying to finish with my wrists almost in the same position they were at setup and at impact. I encourage you to try to take out the excessive wrist movements in your shot. That'll help you get the launch angle fairly correct. I hope this video was helpful for you. We talked about a few setup pieces and a few in-swing pieces. If you have any questions or comments, please put them below. I'm happy to jump in and answer them. If you need even more detail, I invite you to find a local Operation 36 coach near you.